we really felt that it was important to put the parliamentarians and presidents together and just, like I said, just really hone in on meetings, because that's really kind of, if you can get that right, a lot of the other things seem to fall in place. Organized meetings actually are pretty reflective of kind of organized organizations, I think. So we will have this recorded now. And if you want to use the chat function, that's awesome. But you're also free to hold your questions until we get to kind of a good stopping point. We have a few of them along the way. And if we somehow missed your question, feel free to, resurface it or ask maybe one of the board members that's on here, Sumi, Kami, Sherry, and you can do that by individually messaging them using the chat feature. And then lastly, we just really want you to know that we put all this material on the Torrance Council of PTAs.org website. A lot of it was probably also sent. I know the parliamentarians got a lot of handouts via email just a little while ago. So don't feel like you have to furiously, write down notes unless that's your thing, and that's cool, and that's no judgment there. So, yeah. Hold on. Okay, there you go. So I thought it might be kind of helpful just to kind of know who's like with us today. Oh, it's so funny. Uh-oh, just kidding. Everything's a little different now. So anyhow, I'm launching this poll. Just play along, friends. Just gives us kind of a lay of the land. We've got 42 folks here. So if you guys did poll shop pop up. I swear in my mind's eye, this all worked out so seamlessly. Cool beans. And it's not mandatory. If you guys happen not to see it, like because you're on your phone calling in and just listening to us yammer, just know it's all good. So,
Nanette, this is Z. I just want to say that was awesome. I just love what you put together. That was awesome.
Oh no, you haven't seen the rest of it yet, friend.
You got to teach us how you did this. This is amazing.
Oh, you guys are sweethearts. I love you guys. Okay, so with about 78% of the votes in, some of you guys, I'm just going to guess, were just like messing with me. It looks like it's a pretty good mix. Half and half in terms of presidents and kind of half and half in terms of parliamentarians, and then a few homies just along for the ride. So thank you for that. So now that we've got that little bit of business out of the way, I thought it was kind of important, just before I kick it over to Denise and Diane, just to level set. A lot of us come from PTA, some of us don't. So before we really begin our talk and really dive into anything, I always think it's important to remind everyone why we exist and what exactly a PTA is. So you're a board member and a leader for a nonprofit organization. Let that sink in for just a second, which is a part of one of the largest and oldest advocacy groups in the United States, for children at least. 122 years, maybe, I think. Yeah, it's pretty old. I mean, it's a big deal. So our focus is entirely on pushing for policies that support children and youth as well as their families. So things like health, safety, education. And at our school campuses, this is really kind of represented by, educational field trips, running art programs, running the library, purchasing, items for the school, for teacher supplies or things like that. And so by doing those kinds of things, that's how we support our local communities. But when we get memberships, which hopefully we will, just tons and tons, all of those funds and all of that effort actually goes toward the advocacy that's done at a much higher level. And so how we support the advocacy is by being active and involved in our local communities, but also, acting upon any legislative actions that come to us from the national and state PTA. So again, that's probably not news for a lot of you guys, but I always think that that's putting the why in front of everything else is pretty important. And then I also think it's important to note that we don't endorse companies, candidates, religious or political viewpoints. This strict focus really on issues and policies and programs really allows us to stay razor focused on our mission, our goals. And so when we get caught up in kind of Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, you know, all of those labels, that doesn't help us really, because what we want to do is really just be impactful and make good choices and try to do the best we can by our members, especially the children and families who we serve. So that's kind of, I think that's really the end of my spiel. I also kind of constantly am telling people, if at any point you're in a board meeting or you're having a discussion about whether or not to do something, you go back to this mission. And if the answer is it doesn't meet the mission, then you pretty much have your answer. So I would say, like, use that. Remember this is kind of like your guiding light, as it were, because that's entirely what we're kind of called to do as PTA, as a PTA group. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to introduce Denise Bauman, who's our amazing PTA president, council president, and she's going to take it on.
Hello, hello, hello. And again, if you have any questions, if you just chimed in, go ahead and put it in the chat. I have Sherry and Sumi and all them that will kind of monitor it. And then towards the end, we'll have like a Q&A and everything. So we'll bring it up at the time. So basically, bottom line is that, you know, I'm going to discuss the role of presidents of PTA. And as a reminder, I'm not going to be reading any of the bullet points. It's just meant for you to kind of look it over as I'm talking about it. And of course, we're going to have more trainings later on throughout the year. And of course, during your time, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time, and you can CC myself or CC Annette, what's her name? The one that starts with an N. You know, feel free to, you know, email both of us, and we'll try to answer any questions as well, and also our parliamentarian, Diane, as well. So basically, in the short of it, you're basically the captain of your ship. So, and helping to guide and support your PTA. You're also a representative of your PTA unit, and you're also a key coordinator between your school and your PTA activities. Because remember, we are guests on the campuses, and this collaboration between the school and the unit is very important. Also, a couple of important things to note: as a president, you're automatically part of any committee ex officio, except the nominating committee. And our parliamentarian will touch bases on that later on during this training. And yes, you will be heavily involved in running your PTA and likely attend a lot of meetings. Also, you want to meet with your principal if you haven't already done so. It is a must, because you want to we recommend at least once a month if you can, monthly, unless something comes up you need to meet them sooner or anything, please by all means do that. But you want to meet with them because you want to make sure you spend time with them. You want to also get started on the calendar if you haven't already done so, because you want to start planning the PTA calendar and make sure that anything that you want to do PTA-wise with an event or something doesn't conflict with the school events. That might be at the same time, same day, or anything like that. So you want to make sure that both calendars match with the school and with your PTA event. Also, being organized is really a trick to managing this role effectively. And so, you know, we look forward for ways to, you want to look forward for ways to keep track on projects and meetings, and also adding things like reminders on your own calendar is also very helpful. And lastly, you want to delegate. You have a lot to do, and asking for help and advice is critical. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It also helps to give an opportunity for your team to develop. You are not expected to do everything. Please spread it out to all your boards, your chairs, you know, but don't try to do everything by yourself. Okay, on the next slide, your job as a president is also to ensure your team has training and tools to do the job. One major area is to understand financial procedure. It is vital that you and your board consider expenditures and authorize them before monies are spent. You are a check signer, and you're also a signatory on contracts along with one other board member. So you want to make sure that if you do sign a contract, it's not just the chair or just one board. You have to have two signatures, and one has to be the president. So please make sure you do that. And it's also for insurance purposes as well. Also, careful consideration, deliberation, and approval from your association is mandatory, because again, your association votes and approves whatever you do event-wise, expenditure-wise, and everything. And having a financial report at every meeting made available to your board and association is a must. So you want to make sure that you have your financials ready at every meeting. Your role is also to ensure your unit adheres to all the filings of the taxes, annual charitable trust, any audits on time. So while each board member has their own roles, your job is to make sure to keep a high level of view of what is happening in the unit. Also, some tips: ensure your financial team gets training. It's very important. So hopefully some of your financial team will be at tomorrow's training. It's good to have them do it now instead of waiting till September, because you're going to be doing a lot of business during the summer. If they could not do it tonight or tomorrow, then make sure they attend the September one. Also, plan for financial training with your own board, just so that they understand the responsibilities with respect to how money is counted, turned in, spent, and reimbursed. This might be led by your treasurer or your financial team. If you need hands, if you need a hand, let council know, and we would be more than happy to assist you on that. All right, next, we got also, as a president, you are a representative at all council, 33rd District, state, and national PTA events. Every month, you are expected to come to a council meetings. Our meetings happen on the first Wednesday of the month, unless there's a holiday that falls within that Wednesday. Or if, for example, our meetings, our regular executive board meetings are held at the Casey Geyser Library. If that room is not available, then we sometimes have to switch it then to the second Wednesday. But know that the first Wednesday of the month is our regular executive board meeting. And then also get time sensitive at these meetings. You're going to get time sensitive information to share with your board, and you'll also turn in membership dues, treasurer's reports, minutes, audits, and any other items that are outlined each month by a checklist that you will receive in advance. And you want to make sure that those items are turned in when you come to the meeting. We ask that if you cannot come to the meeting, then you have a representative come in your place. Council asks you to provide us with 2 delegate names at the beginning of your term who have voting rights at council association meetings. Your delegates are either appointed or elected. You want to check your bylaws by your association in September or October, whenever your first association meeting is in the fall, along with 2 alternates. So again, if for whatever reason you can't because you have to work, your kids are sick, or something comes up, kind of know ahead of time with your board, say, hey, is anybody available to attend a meeting? If I can't, give them the calendar dates ahead of time. So then that way, if someone says, hey, you know what, I'm available October, January, and March, make sure then that you put them down like that or like that. You just want to make sure that there's somebody available, because again, not only do you have to turn in things, but in turn, we give you things to bring back to your unit. So try to make sure that you do try to get an alternate to come. If you can't, that's fine. But again, we want to try to get that. And also, one tip is coordination is the key. Make sure your recording secretary, financial team, and membership all know when you have to have documents ready so that they can get them ready for you to turn in at the meetings, like membership dues and other council items. So just make sure that you have that.
Mhm.
Then
Can I add a quick note? Oh, sorry. Can I add a quick note about that? So I thought about this, and I can say that I hadn't handled it well when I've been president in different capacities, but I wish I had, because this is me talking back to like the former years me and saying like, stupid girl, do something better. I think that if you can go to your recording secretary and you let them know every 15th of the month is when I'm going to need the minutes, and you let your treasurer know that, and your membership person know that the week before the event, you really need the membership envelopes turned in, the dues figured out, and then the treasurer will give you the one check for the membership dues that you're remitting, and as well as any of the stuff, that it just makes your life so much easier. Then you go and you grab, boom, the check, and everybody sends you the electronic files, and then you just forward it on to council, and like life is beautiful, and you've kept everyone accountable and involved. So I just wanted to kind of expand on that thought a little bit.
Yeah, and also to go back on the signature of the contracts like Diane put on there, make sure that when you do sign the contract, you as a council, unit president, not council, I'm council, but unit president, make sure you put the title under your name. So that way then for auditing purposes, as well as for contractual obligations, as well as for insurance purposes, at least if it's signed, they identified who it is, because as a president, again, you're kind of the responsible party on everything. So just make sure you do that. All right, and then on to the next slide for the parliamentarian. So basically, the parliamentarian is that for you, Diane, or is that for me?
I can take this one if you want.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I say arm wrestle.
Hi all, I'm Diane, I'm the parliamentarian for Torrance Council. I'm just going to give you a little brief overview of what your role is as a parliamentarian. And often we think of a parliamentarian's job as being the easy job with nothing to do, but it is an important role. You have the important role of assisting the president and helping to maintain order in the meetings. And in that capacity, you'll need to make sure that you attend all the meetings so that you can be there for your president. And this is why parliamentarian is an appointed position, because you are someone that they trust to work closely with, and you want to develop that relationship. It's also your role to be the expert on your unit bylaws and to keep them up to date. Your bylaws are your legally binding document of your PTA, and they will provide you the basic framework of how everything functions, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later. And you're also responsible for instructing the nominating committee and getting them started. So today we're just going to give you a brief overview of all what the parliamentarian does, but in the fall I'll get into the finer points and specifics and give you a lot more information and handouts and things for how to conduct those things in the future.
And if I talk too fast, let me know. It's not because I have to go to the bathroom. I just sometimes have a tendency to do that and kind of get on a roll. And and then there's 44 people here. So if you do have questions, it's kind of hard to see you. Raise your hand, or I don't know if you want to put on chat real quick, or say who you are, and then we'll put you in there. But anyway, just wanted to let you know. Feel free to put on there or tell me to slow down. So don't worry, I won't hate you.
That's
So,
funny.
does anybody have any quick questions or any comments or anything? Yes,
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
And maybe this is something you can actually clarify for me, because I've been sending a representative for me to go to my meetings. So is there a rule or something that I was told that I couldn't send someone that's currently a part of council to attend a meeting for me? Is that a rule? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, because
I could have had to go, but I couldn't because they're already with council.
Yeah, because Diane can correct me. Basically, bottom line is if somebody on your board is a chair or a board member of council, they can't take a vote for you. So it has to be somebody that doesn't already have a vote on the council level.
Okay.
So, yeah, so like, you know how you send Emmy?
Yeah.
Technically, she can't really vote because she's already a chair on council.
Okay.
But Diane can go ahead and chime in.
Okay, so Emmy can't go. So she's a chair. Oh, she's a chair on council?
Only if she's a standing committee chair. So basically the idea is that you don't want to send somebody who already has a vote, because then you're not getting a vote, right? And then you're not also counting in our quorum. So if we had everybody send somebody that was part of Torrance Council, then we wouldn't end up having any other representatives from our schools. But if you're just trying to get information, and if you get stuck with, not being able to, I mean, it's most ideal if you can send somebody who's not a part of council or a part of another unit. But if you just need to get information or turn in stuff, then you can choose anybody that you like. They just wouldn't be able to have a vote.
I see. Yeah, because I was told that I couldn't, and so I was like, okay. So I just couldn't ask neither Mary Sharp nor could I have asked Michelle, because they're already on council. So, okay. That's what I was wondering. So, because sometimes everybody gets so busy, even in the West area, everybody's so busy. And so that's why I had either Emmy or Linda, either one of them, they offered to do. And I thought that was great. And I appreciated it, because they kind of tag team with each other back and forth. So it's good to know. It's good to know that I just want to make sure that it was okay too. All right, that's it.
And then there was a question from Sherry Childers from Victor, asking how long do we keep paperwork such as Jogathon sponsorships, membership, or direct donation paperwork? Financials are forever, correct? We do have, and we'll have it on the our TCPTA website. But there is like a sheet that has how many things, you know, what you can keep for like 1 year, 4 years, whatever, forever. For example, like recording secretary books, recording secretary minutes, those have to stay forever, you know, stuff like that. So we will put it on the TCPTA webpage. It's also available on the CAPTA website, and you can check the toolkit there. But I know I have a form here, and Annette might still have it with her, and that we can go ahead and put it onto the TCPTA website. And then I can probably also have my corresponding secretary also email it out to the presidents, so you have that quick reference. But there is like a chart with the years and what can be tossed and what has to be kept.
You can find it in the toolkit under records retention.
That's the word I couldn't
Thank you.
figure out.
I kept thinking schedule retention. Yeah.
So, does anybody else have any questions?
Oh, I got one more. Somebody else came in. How long do we? Nope. I think that's it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. And if anything strikes you, like I said, we have other board members who are also kind of waiting in the wings, helping. You know, we'll answer questions as they can as well. So don't be shy. So, oops. Sorry, you can hear like my dogs barking. My mother-in-law yelling at the dogs. I'm going to mute myself. Okay, take it away, Diane.
Okay, so quickly, a little bit about your bylaws. As I mentioned before, this is the rules of your organization. This is basically the rules that come to us from CAPTA, and they are guided also by the IRS because we are a 501(c) organization. So there's a lot of strict rules that we need to abide by in order to qualify for that. So it's a good idea to read your bylaws and become familiar with them, both for presidents and for parliamentarians. For parliamentarians, this is the stuff that you need to know so that you can advise your president and be that good partner for them. And these things go along with the CAPTA toolkit, which we just mentioned on their website, which is now a handy searchable online resource. So So you can always go look up things there, as well as we are governed by the Roberts Rules of Order. And there are some searchable things online for Roberts Rules as well. You might even have, your unit might even have a book. Although I have to tell you, I've tried to read through it and it's pretty long and very wordy. So if you're gonna buy the Roberts Rules, get the abbreviated version or just search for things online, which is probably a lot more easier. A quick tip is that you want to use the bylaws cheat sheet that I emailed to you all. It's a fillable form. It's really handy. You just take your bylaws, run through it, fill in all those things, and then when you get to your meetings, you'll have all that stuff at your fingertips, how much your membership is, you know, what your quorums are for all your meetings and things like that. So that's a great reference to keep on hand. So when they ask you something, you don't have to go, oh, I don't know, but you can just take a peek at your sheet there. The president, the recording secretary, and the parliamentarian keep the original signed copies of your bylaws. Some of you guys might have heard this from me this year when you were updating. So you're going to have one that has the wet signatures on it, and those 3 officers keep those in their records. The parliamentarian is responsible to make sure that your board members have a copy of the bylaws as well. If you don't have a copy of your bylaws for your unit, please let me know. I have copies of all of them and I'll be happy to get you one, because you should definitely have that for your unit. You don't want to send your bylaws out to everyone though. They don't get distributed widely. Bylaws contain sensitive financial information with our IRS numbers and signatures of your officers, and we don't want that to be distributed on your website or sent out via email. However, you are supposed to give a copy or show a copy if member requests to see it. So a good idea is to leave a copy of your bylaws in the office at your school or somewhere that's easily accessible. Just make sure that they don't take it home with them and people can go there and view it. On to the next. All right, so those are a bunch of the things that are actually in your bylaws on this slide here. There have been some significant changes to the general bylaws form starting in 2018. So if you haven't updated your bylaws in a while or looked at them in a while, you may want to dust them off and take a look and update them. For instance, the responsibilities of the officers that used to be in the bylaws are no longer there. You will have to go on CAPTA to look for them. So all of the things that are in the CAPTA toolkit apply just as much as the bylaws do. And then as of this year, you may have known that they have added a requirement for audit committee member and a bank reconciliation reviewer, which you need to, your executive board, not your president, needs to appoint in the fall, so for the coming year. So most of the rules about how to conduct business can be found in your standing rules, which is at the end of your bylaws, in addition to the main portion of your bylaws. You want to be mindful of quorums for your board and association. This is the minimum number of members that you need to conduct business. So if your quorum is 12 and you only have 10, you cannot officially vote on anything, okay? So anything that you do, if you don't have a quorum, is not valid. So paying authorizations for paying bills, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to make sure that you always have quorum. The body of your bylaws cannot be changed because it comes from CAPTA without approval from CAPTA and a vote of your association. So changes must be made and submitted through council. You would turn them into me and sent through channels to CAPTA, and then they are adopted when standing rules, however, can be updated by your unit, and you just need to get a vote of your board and your association in order to approve that. And if you do make changes to your standing rules, if you could please send a copy to me so I can have them on record, that would be great. Next slide. And I wanted to speak a little bit about parliamentary procedure basics. So basically, the whole reason why we have these rules and the conduct and why we do these things is do our meetings the way that we do is to support the ideals of fairness and making sure that everyone has a chance to be heard and that the majority can decide. So you may have wondered why we have to give notice. Why is it so important that we give 30 days notice for this and 10 days notice for this? And well, you know, why can't we just have somebody call in on our meeting, and why can't they just send a proxy vote so we can have quorum? It's also that there can be a fair discussion presenting all sides, that everybody who's eligible to vote and make a decision can hear that and then give their vote. So if your president finds it helpful, parliamentarians can track who has requested to speak and what motions have been made. And keep in mind that only members of the group that is meeting have the right to attend and raise issues or make motions and vote. So if it's at your board meeting, not anybody can attend. Only members that are on your board have the ability to speak and vote. If non-members wish to address the group, then they must be granted permission. That's my brief bylaws overview.
Okay, there's a couple of questions for you, Diane.
Okay.
The first question came from Erica from Riviera. She wants to know, do you provide hard copies only? So no electronic copies for the board members?
You know, I think it's okay as long as your board knows they're not supposed to be sharing those with other people. I know it's a lot of paper, but I have to tell you, in the new form that they have made, because they took out a lot of stuff, it's a lot shorter than it used to be. So you know, be easier to provide a hard copy. Ideally, a hard copy is good, but if you want to share it with your board, also, you know, with the caveat that they should not be passing that on. And if you want to, maybe if you send an electronic copy, you might want to take out the page with the numbers and or redact, you know, the numbers and the signatures.
And then another question was, again, if you do not have quorum, what happens if you don't have quorum? And then I think you spoke about it. And then what if you need checks and contracts signed or approved?
What do you need?
Cindy, there was a question that says, what happens if you don't have a quorum? And what happens if you need checks and contracts signed or approved?
Oh, I see. Okay, you cannot conduct any business that has to do with a motion that needs to be voted on cannot be conducted without quorum. So you will need to really do your best to get somebody in so that you can, you know, enough people in to make your quorum. I know right now we're doing all this virtual thing. In the new 2019 bylaws form, if you decide you want to update, there is a a section in there that you can leave in that allows your boards to meet virtually. I think they intended that really for board of directors, not so much for units, but now, you know, they're using it obviously now. So that could be possibly a way, if you can get a person to participate where they can hear everyone and everyone can hear them. If you're strapped for, you know, people, that's one way that you can do it, but it's most preferable to have everyone present because no one is allowed to vote by proxy.
Can I also add, you know, I've been at a unit that was really, really tiny and we had a hard time making quorum, and we as a group decided we'd move the time of our meeting. You could even theoretically move the date, although just know that if you traditionally have it on Tuesdays as per your bylaws, that if you moved it to a Wednesday or Thursday, you would be potentially in conflict with the middle school or the high school. I don't remember which days are which. I'm just gonna say that. But I do know that, you know,
high school is
middle
Wednesdays,
school
elementary is Thursday.
That's why these ladies are so brilliant. So anyhow, yeah, what Diane said, but you know, so you guys could make that decision as a group to, you know, calendar it differently. If you have a lot of working parents and maybe mornings just never work, or if you have a lot of parents who like morning is the only time that works, I would refrain from switching around and trying just to have a set thing so everyone can have it in their calendars, and impress upon them the importance of coming to these. That's part of their responsibility as joining the board. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, and then we have another question from Jen from Wood, and we're going to talk also about this later, Jen, at the president's part, but it says, can we conduct board meetings in the coming academic year on Zoom like we did the past few months? Do we have to change bylaws to accommodate this, or just take a vote at the beginning of the new year?
Yeah, so I know that they lifted that in-person thing just for this time period. I don't know how long that's going to extend because of the stay-at-home orders. They have allowed that. I don't know if they're going to want to continue to allow that. And I don't think that they want that to be a regular kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know that state, you know, state did get a lot of questions. CAPTA, California State PTA, has gotten a lot of questions from units and councils. And they said, like Diane said, right now, until we can continue with online, you know, in-person meetings, they'll allow us to do the Zoom, but they said that they'll look into it, but we have no time frame or no idea if or when that would happen. So just bear with us, because once we hear from national and then from state and then from 33rd, then we will pass it on to you. But until then, we'll still be able to continue doing Zoom. But then if we go back to regular in-person meetings, then that might stop. So, but we'll let you know.
All right, so moving on. Thanks for the questions. Oh, sorry, are you guys still?
There's still one more question. Does everyone know that to serve on a board, you must be a member of that school's PTA?
Yeah, duh. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, seriously, presidents should definitely be hounding your membership chair people to double check the roster of all your chairs, all of your board members, and then continue to harass them. So they theoretically should all already be members, but we do know sometimes, like in middle school or high school, where you have members who are coming from like elementary school or the middle school, they may not yet be members of yours. And so the advice had been all along, get their membership, you know, added to your, well, get a membership for them for your school, like ASAP.
And for example,
right.
Let's just say you have a 5th grade parent that's willing to be on your board next year at the middle school level. As long as they're a PTA at their current school that they're at, they're eligible to be on the slate. But as soon as they're elected, you want to get them to get a membership for that school. So you want to make sure that that happens. But in the meantime, they don't have to be a member of the school. You know, like I said, if they're coming from a feeder school, as long as they're a member at the current school they're at, they're okay. But then you want to make sure they become a member of that new school that they're going to be on the board, or even as a chair. So just make sure that happens. So, and then Francis,
are we ready to move?
Yeah, and then Francis mentioned that last notice said that Zoom meetings expire June 30th. Again, Francis, we will find out more. I have an executive board meeting with 33rd District who we report to. So I'm sure I will bring that question up. And I know it's been a discussion. I mean, as of right now, at the rate we're going, who knows if we're gonna, we probably might start hybrid in the fall. Again, depends on state. But until then, we'll keep you posted on that. Okay, move on. Alrighty then. Okie dokie, Snoopy. So we're now on to the wonderful PTA meeting agenda. All right. Oh, and I forgot we're recording, so I'm acting silly here. Okay. Alrighty then. So we now are at the part of the training that deals with running meetings. So basically, how it goes is president calls and presides over the meetings. You will see the general topics covered in meetings. Again, I am not going to touch bases on the bullet points, but you can just go ahead and kind of look at what we have there. But you also have access to all the slides and supporting materials as well as this recording. And we recommend that you provide your board an opportunity to see the draft agenda and request to be added to it, or if they will not be able to attend it, that they send the report to be presented. And then this will allow you to organize the agenda so that it allows enough time for all of your business to be handled. Also, along with the agenda, written notice of a meeting should be sent to members at least 10 days before a meeting, including the date, time, location, and proposed business to be considered. And usually, I'm sure, like, for example, like on our Torrance Council PTA website, we have all our dates of our meetings that are going to happen, especially the association meeting. And I know Diane will chime on this later. And then also you want to coordinate maybe with your school principal or whoever your webmaster is at your school. If you might have a specific PTA tab on your website to where then you can also put the calendar of events of your PTA meetings as well as your association meeting. And it's very important, if you can, on the particular association meeting where you're going to have your election, please kind of notate it on that date. So if your election's in February or in March, when you have your association meeting for that election, make sure it kind of says election on it, because we want to make sure that everything's done according to everything like that. For the election and bylaws changes, written notice must be given at least 30 days in advance. Also, we don't know what will happen with meetings in the future. This is just, again, to go back on that question that Jen asked for Zoom. So we don't know what the future is going to be and if CAPTA will extend permission to keep virtual meetings, but we do recommend that you view the vital meeting section of the California State PTA and to get familiar with tools like Zoom or Google Meets. And for some of you, if you may not have that, Torrance Council PTA will be willing to allow you to use our Zoom, but it's on a first come, first served basis. So you would have to email Nanette to see if it's available for whatever date that you need the meeting. But hopefully by now, some of you might have it. I know some people, like maybe with their work or their personal account, might have Zoom or even Google. So hopefully you'll be able to use that. All right, so the next, we're going to spend a little bit of time speaking on meetings because, of course, there's a lot of business on your association that will happen in between. There'll be a lot of business for your association that will happen in between association meetings. And minutes and your financial docs or legal documents that are essential. So knowing how things should be presented and recorded ensures that we are all being good stewards of our association assets and aligning with our objectives as a nonprofit of PTA. And then the sample agenda are pulled from the toolkits, and we'll go through some of the components. And Diane, feel free to stop me at any time if you need to add or elaborate on anything on the agenda. So we are highlighting what the president said and also indicating what does or does not need to be in motions. Again, we have materials on our site that will be helpful. Also, you'll see that we have an order here, but that will largely depend on your group. For example, financial reports could go at the end of the meetings or middle, but just make sure that it's reflected on the agenda and you've given financial team enough time to sort through the bills and such. You also will call your meeting to order, and you can note the time. So for example, I call this meeting to order at 6:49 p.m. So that's just like an example to speak of. And if your recording secretary or parliamentarian are not at the meeting, you'll need to make sure to appoint someone to take the minutes and or be a parliamentarian. So you would just indicate on there, Diane, would you be my parliamentarian pro tem? She'd say yes. You make a notation on the minutes. Sumi, would you consider being my recording secretary pro tem? She agrees. Again, make sure it's notated on the minutes who has been designated to take those spots in their places. You may also want to include any guest names on your agenda and announce excused absences. So for example, if somebody would like to attend your executive board meeting, let's say if you're at the high school and the site supervisor would like to speak something, to your meeting, then you just say, our guest speaker is Sue Key. So you just go ahead and make sure that they are also announced as a guest. And also guests will be there for their section and then leave. They do not have voting rights and are not asked to stay during the business portion of the meeting. And then a note, standing committee chairs are considered members of your executive board and do not need to be counted as a guest. So you want to check your bylaws to see who your standing committee could be. It could be your budget, it could be membership committee, it could be, anything like that. So you want to check your bylaws as to who's considered standing committee members. The secretary will also then read the minutes, or with the approval of the group, the minutes may be posted, distributed in advance. It could be emailed or assigned to a committee of 3 or more for approval or correction, especially for association meetings. Then you'll have your financial reports. You may or may not have financial secretary or a budget and finance chair. If not, all these reports then will be given by your treasurer. And we recommend having an updated budget to actual document at every meeting so your team can see how you are doing financially and use that information to make decisions about spending. Like maybe, for example, a chair for Red Ribbon has a budget of $75 and it looks like they're going to need to spend $100. So then you want to look at your budget in front of you and see if there's a possibility to increase that budget. And if so, where will you be able to take the money from? So that just kind of gives you an example right there. All right, so then next.
Back here real quick. Sorry, for anybody who's really new and kind of feeling green or sort of not sure how this goes, you could also theoretically make yourself an agenda that's really your script. So that way you can kind of follow the order until it's sort of like training wheels, right? You only need it for 1 or 2 meetings. You could even maybe go as far as writing in motions so that people can follow along as you guys are in your first meeting or 2. So just think about, being creative and doing what you feel like you need to help not just yourself, but the rest of your team feel comfortable with meetings and motions and all of that stuff and help them understand the order of it.
And also to kind of go back for excused absences, I forgot to mention too. Let's just say, for example, you as the unit president cannot make the meeting and conduct the meeting. Then you can ask your first VP or your executive VP to go ahead and run the meeting on your behalf. So just kind of letting you know. So if you can't make it, say for example, if I can't make it because I have to go through a 33rd district meeting, then Nanette can, as my first VP, can step up and run the meeting for me. So just to let you know, don't be like, oh, I can't be there, so we're gonna have to cancel the meeting. You can ask your first VP or your executive vice president to run the meeting on your behalf. So just to let you know on that as well. All right, so now, since the approval of the budget does not authorize the expenditure of funds, bills must be presented and their payment voted upon. Basically, in other words, just because your association gave you the thumbs up on the budget does not mean you can just spend it. Darn it, forget that then, I guess I won't buy that car. Anyway, so bills should be itemized as to amount, whom to pay, and what payment covers. Any bills authorized and paid by the executive board must be ratified and recorded in the association minutes. Ratified bills should be itemized as to amount, who was paid, and what the payment covers. Funds should be released by the association for any payment authorizations due between association meetings. We heavily recommend using activity or event plans. These forms will allow the chair to map out the plan, including financial, and allows the boards to weigh in before anything happens. And you can find that event planning worksheet available on the Torrance Council PTA's website. Please make sure your board and chairs also understand the process. They need to know where to find financial forms. Their original receipts are required. Know when they can be expected, like kind of give them an idea when they expect to get reimbursed, what is and what is not reimbursable, etc. And again, you can purchase these forms from the Torrance Council PTA, which saves you time because you're only using because we basically, our forms are like carbon copied. So one goes to the recording secretary, one goes to the treasurer, and then one goes to the chair or the VP, whoever requests the funds. And again, if you do download the ones from CAPTA, you make your own, you'll just have to keep making copies for chairs, financial team, and recording secretary. And payment authorizations need to be signed by the president and recording secretary. And all checks require 2 signatures. So you want to make sure on your bylaws who you have as authorized check signers. Usually is your treasurer, the president, the treasurer, and is usually your first VP or your executive VP or 3rd or 4th. So you want to check your bylaws to see who are your authorized check signers. All right, then.
Sorry, one quick note. I think I forgot to put this in the notes. It's also important. I know we're not listing out what everybody else says, and that's like intentional because that could go on forever. But for your treasurer, whoever's presenting the reports, if they're running through a list, I move that we pay invoice number 155 to Diane Wong in the amount of $500 for, I don't know, book fair. Make sure that all of that verbiage goes to your recording secretary. It has to be read into the minutes and then recorded in the minutes. And those minutes are your legal binding documents. If those approvals aren't in your minutes, it never happened, basically. So just make sure that everyone understands how vitally important that is, and that as your treasurer is going through all of the reading out, or your financial team is reading out the ratifications of bills, like maybe they paid in between meetings that were authorized already, but all of that is just nice and clean and organized. And really, I think what we put down here is probably pretty helpful, I hope.
And I don't know if I missed that part because the question was about the minutes. I may have missed it, but yeah, for, on the agenda, so for the approval of the minutes. So basically, I'm looking at I may have skipped that on the thing, but when you do call the meeting to order, you can either have your recording secretary read them, the part, about the recording secretary reading the minutes or anything. You do not need to have a motion made to have the minutes approved. All you have to do is, the minutes, if they're emailed ahead of time or if their copies are made during the meeting and you look it over, the president can then go ahead and say, does anybody have any questions, corrections, or anything for the minutes? Okay, so if hearing none, then you can say the minutes will be filed for audit. If someone says, oh, I noticed that you had the wrong date, the recording secretary then will make the correction later, then you say the minutes will be approved as corrected. And then keep in mind, if for whatever reason you didn't have time, your board did not have time to look over the minutes, you can still go ahead and approve the minutes as presented or emailed or however it was presented. And then later on, the corrections could be made. So if you see something the next day and you realize, oh my God, I realized we forgot this motion, it wasn't made, you let the recording secretary know, the president know, and then the minutes will be corrected. And then we can make a notation at the next meeting that there was a correction to the minutes. So, all right. And then also make sure that you, the minutes that you're going to file for audit, you say the minutes from the executive board meeting from January 1st, 2019. So make sure that that date of whatever minutes you're approving is also on there. All right, and then lastly, so where am I? What slide am I on anyway? Slide 17, I think. All right, so next we're going to look at the next part of your agenda. Again, these then can be placed higher in your agenda. So you will have a section of your agenda dedicated to correspondence. So if you have a corresponding secretary and you have somebody that wrote like a thank you, like somebody that got a scholarship, or if you did a donation or something like that, and you got a thank you letter, you can go ahead, have the corresponding secretary read any correspondence you have. If you don't have a corresponding secretary, you yourself as a president or anybody can go ahead and read it. And then, so then you will then move into your section, you will move into your chair, director, or committee reports, including your principal, teacher rep. Sometimes if you as a president have a comment, you can on your agenda say president's comment and just say something, say, hey, thank you. Welcome to the new school year. I look forward to working with you all, you know, stuff like that. And then there will likely be those that need to make a motion for things like approving a program, vendors, payments, you know, such like that. For example, you know, as a president, you cannot make a motion, and Diane will talk about that in the next 8 motion steps, but just a reminder, as a president, you cannot make a motion. Somebody else will have to make the motion for you. So again, if a chair wants to make the motion, you know, I moved that we spend $75 for Red Ribbon Week to purchase bookmarks. Somebody seconds it, is approved and everything. And again, Diane will go into that, but just letting you know, presidents cannot make any motions. And then note that not all chairmen come to every meeting. For example, Red Ribbon Week chair may just only come to one and that's it. But again, check your bylaws to see who is on your standing committee, because again, your standing committee counts as your quorum and as voting.
Can I chime in?
Yes.
For your committee chairs, they're going to want to come and present their program plan so that they can get their program, you know, the plan that they're having for their event to get approved, so that they can present to the board what they plan to do, how they plan to spend their money. Those things all need to be approved by the board before their event happens. And then of course they're going to want to come back at the end to let the board know how everything went.
And then lastly, any additional business can be addressed at the end of the meeting. Items that were previously tabled can be brought under unfinished business. So you also, and that's why you also want your parliamentarian there, because you don't want to spend 30 minutes or so on a particular item on the agenda. If anything, try to table it, come back to it later if there's time, or push it to a next meeting. But you want to try to, again, minimize all your meetings and everything like that, because you don't want to spend 4 hours at an executive board meeting when you want to be home eating dinner with your family. Also, if someone wants to bring in new business, you should have them make a motion and then vote on discussing the new business. You can conclude with announcements, but again, like everything else is in the agenda as well. And then note the time the meeting has been adjourned. So you want to make sure you call the meeting to order, and then once you're done, then you want to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to speak really quickly to the 8 steps to making a motion. This is a quick overview. Basically, the person who wants to make a motion is going to obtain the floor, raise their hand, whatever your procedure is in your meeting. The president is going to recognize them and so they can speak. And the person who makes the motion is going to say, I move to. So this is one of those finer points of things. If you want to really be proper, it's not I make a motion, I motion to. The wording is I move to, and then you're going to say what it is that you are proposing. All motions need to be recorded in the minutes with the name of the person who made the motion and the exact wording of the motion and the action taken. So tip is that your secretary or president can request the motions be written down by the maker for accuracy. So as Sumi mentioned in the chat, I noticed, you can use a motion slip. Some people, they have a form where you fill it out with your name and you write down the motion that you made exactly the way it was said, and then you can give that to your recording secretary. It just makes their job a little bit easier so they can keep track of all that. Sometimes when you're talking and saying things, it's hard to get it down exactly. And then motions can be changed over the course of the time, right? So if you want to change the motion, say you started with something, we want to have an event at the park at 9 o'clock, and then you decide, oh, well, we don't really want to have it at 9 o'clock. We're not really sure what time we want to have it at. You can strike a word or a phrase, you can take that out. You can insert a word or a phrase, you can add something in, or you can do both, take something out, add something in. You can substitute the entire motion. So strike is insert, strike and insert, substitute the entire motion, or amend a previously adopted motion. And each time you amend it, you're supposed to actually vote upon that amendment so that everybody agrees this is how we want the the motion to read, and then you go back to the main motion and vote upon that when all the amendments are addressed. Okay, so as Denise mentioned, because presidents are supposed to be unbiased people, and they're showing impartiality, presidents are not supposed to make motions, particularly in large group meetings like your association, where you want to have a sense of quorum and be official. So that would be the thing. If you have a very small group, maybe if you have like a group of 5 or whatever, the president can make a motion. They actually, you do as presidents have the right to make a motion, but in these bigger meetings, we refrain from doing that. So it's always good to have someone else do it for you. Also, presidents do have the right to vote, just like anybody else. But presidents don't actually exercise that right to vote to show, to keep that impartiality. However, if you have a controversial kind of vote and the president's vote will sway it one way or the other, because majority is only one more than half, then certainly the president should cast their vote, and that's important. Okay. And then lastly, I want to speak a little bit about the nominating committee to our parliamentarians. So this is something that I just want you guys to keep on your radar. It's not something I'm going to get into detail about right now, but your nominating committee needs to be elected at your association meeting, and it needs to be at least 2 months prior to your election meeting. Now, most of us have our election meetings in February, some as late as mid-April, but not later than that. And there are some associations that actually only have 3 meetings. So if you have 3 meetings and your first one is in September and your next one is in February, then you're going to need to be electing your nominating committee in September, which I know it sounds crazy and it's really quick. But you need to check your bylaws and find out when is your election meeting, and figure out when you're going to need to elect your nominating committee. A few notes: the president cannot serve on the nominating committee, even though you're ex officio on every committee. This is the one thing that you cannot do. It's the idea that presidents shouldn't be unduly influencing who's going to be on the board. Your principal or a faculty representative that's appointed by the principal will automatically be an advisor on your nominating committee. They don't get a vote, but they can be elected to your nominating committee, and then they will have a vote. Nominating committee members must be PTA members, and they cannot serve if they served the year before. So if you were on the nominating committee the year before, you have to wait another year before you can be on it again. In your handouts, I included a strategies for filling boards sheet. It's kind of a nice little thing that has a lot of tips about how to get people involved in your unit, so that when you come time to actually having to pick the people that are going to be on your board, you're not stuck going, oh my gosh, there's nobody who wants to do this. So you might want to take a look at that. That's one of those things that's good to look at early on in the year. So a little bit, I will address the particulars of the nominating committee and how to do everything once we get to the fall. Denise, were you going to do this one, or you want me to do it?
No, you do it. But let me just real quick, just to go back like on motions and everything, on a couple of meetings that I sat in, I know, especially on the association meetings, I noticed that there were a couple of times the presidents will be reading the motions from the association agenda, then asking somebody to, they will say, okay, the recommendations from the board, and they're reading it, and then they're asking somebody to make a motion for the recommendations. And then that person is trying to make a motion on all those recommendations. You should designate, as a unit president, you should designate somebody to read the recommendations and make the motion. Like, for example, I usually have my recording secretary do it, or I would ask ahead of time, say, hey, Nan, can you do it? Or even, like that. So as a president, you shouldn't be reading those recommendations. Designate somebody to do it, because so that way at the time they're reading it, they're making the motion at the same time. So please try not to do that, because then it takes longer for the association meeting to run. You want to make it done as quickly as possible.
And you'll note that when you make motions that come from the executive board, recommendations from the executive board to your association, you do not need a second for that, because it's coming from more than one person. So there's no need for another person to agree.
You just have to vote and approve it. That's it. Go ahead, Diane.
All right, so I just included a quick checklist for you, since just to keep your eyes open for things that you're going to want to be doing over the summer and in the fall. I also included those two checklists in your handouts. One is a quick checklist. The other one is a little bit more detailed. I sort of laid out, like, throughout the year, the things that are going to be due, when they're going to be due. What's the president's job in that, what's the board's job in that, and what's the association's job in that, and what you have to turn into council. So it's kind of a handy, quick reference for you just to keep track of things throughout the year. So for the summer, you're going to be wanting to make sure, and I'm saying this because I was a council directory person last year, that you submit your council directory information to Brigitte, because she's going to really need that, and she doesn't want to spend her whole summer hunting you down to get your information so that she can put it together. So if you could please make sure to do that. You're going to want to be thinking about preparing and communications, flyers, and things for your fall activities. I recommend that you try to get those into your registration packets at your schools, just to have a wider, cast your net a little bit wider. Change your check signers at the bank July 1st, and then think about your membership drive as well. What in the fall, some of these things you may have taken care of in the spring already, but you do need to present your budget and your programs to be approved at your first association meeting, even if you already did it in the spring. So any fundraisers, contracts, programs not previously approved should be approved at your meeting. You're going to want to prepare and distribute your unit directory, or have somebody to do that. Make sure you're signing any contract, and again, appoint that audit committee member, your bank reconciliation person, your delegates, elect your delegates, or appoint them. Actually, some units have appointed delegates and some units have elected delegates, so make sure that you check your bylaws to see which one yours is, and adopt your audit. Oh, sorry, and release your funds. So that's pretty much it.
So there was a question with regards going back to event planning worksheets. They said, is it a hard and fast rule that if money needs to be spent for events, for example, Red Ribbon, Bike Rodeo, etc., it cannot be spent until the event plan is approved? Actually, the event planning worksheet is not really a mandatory required document. However, it is suggested by CAPTA 33rd that you kind of use it as a guidance to know how money is going to be spent. And that way, then you kind of already have a plan ahead of time as to how money is going to be spent, you know, in the event that you need to make any, if it's an ongoing event or something like that. It's just a way to kind of like be like, okay, this is what my intention is to spend money for Bike Rodeo. We intend to probably use the money to spend it on supplies for snacks or stuff like that. So you kind of want to use it as a guidance for that. Again, it's not mandatory, but we at council, we do use it for any events that we are going to run. So that way people have an idea as to how money is going to be spent. Also, it's a good tool also for somebody that might end up taking on a chair role the next year. And then that way they kind of use it almost like a procedure kind of thing, where then, like, let's just say you have somebody that's not very good about telling you what was done the previous year and you have nothing to go by. At least having this as well is a good guidance for somebody new who's going to take on the role the next year. So again, it's not mandatory, but we suggest that you do use it and get used to using it, just so that way you have something just for, you know, to use as guidance and know how money is going to be spent.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
That form is not mandatory, but it is mandatory that you have your expenditures approved. So it is important for your chair people to let the board know what it is that they're planning to spend their money on, and that the board approves it. If, for instance, you decide to go spend $20 or $100 on something, and then you bring it to your association and they say, no, we don't want to spend that on that, then you're stuck paying the bill. So really those things are in place to protect you as well. I know sometimes, you know, people procrastinate, and I've done it myself, to the last minute, and you don't, you know, have your plan, but it also ensures that everybody's informed and knows what the meeting, you know, what's going on. chairs maybe are new and may not know that there's certain things that you can't spend money on. So you don't want them running around spending money on things that they shouldn't be spending on before getting approval from your board. So it's another good, it's just a quick, easy tool and a way to get people to sort of get organized and get that approval ahead of time.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments or anything?
Stunned silence, Denise. Stunned silence. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. And we tried to pare this thing down too. This is just meetings, babies.
It's okay. I had crib notes.
If you guys have other questions, though, know that you'll reach out. I've been behind on giving mentor assignments, but we are meeting as a small committee later this week, and you guys will each be paired with a seasoned PTA leader from council who's really there to kind of be like your right hand. Expect that they should be coming to at least the first couple of meetings, and maybe even an association. And if you would be kind enough, once you get that assigned mentor, to add them to your email communication and text message groups, just so they could be looped in. It's really hard for them to know when you're going to have a meeting if you're not, you know, giving them that communication. And they can also, if you allow them to be a part of those kind of sidebar communications, they can speak to you as a president on the side and say, hey, these are some things I kind of noticed. Otherwise, their only opportunity is in a meeting, and that sucks. So they'll be your resource also.
Yeah, and also just, you know, and again, we don't have dates yet for meetings and everything. That's something that, you know, we just finished with this year, and that's something, because I also have to wait for 33rd district dates, state dates, and everything like that. But just to give you an idea, if you're an incoming president and the outgoing president has what we call the council directory, and you'll be receiving one, whether it's going to be a hard copy or electronically, on there, under where it says like honor roll, which our historian will do that and get that to you later on, are important dates. So you actually going to have the dates ahead of time from July, or actually it'll be August, and school starts in August, all the way until June. So you kind of will have an idea not only when our meetings are going to be held, when there's going to be 33rd district events going to be held, when you have specific documents that are due on time, whether it's taxes, parliamentarian, whether it's annual treasury reports and all that stuff. So you'll get that information later on. You can also check our website for any dates as well. We'll also send you an email and let you know, and then you're going to also get communication from whoever, either Diane, who is the quote unquote council directory chair until June 30th, and whoever's going to take on that role. But, you know, if you haven't already yet, start getting your roster ready together with the names of each person at whatever position they're holding, whether it's a board position or chair, with their email address that they wish to use, because it will be publicized in this book, but this book stays internal. It does not go out to anybody else, so it just stays internal. But this is for us at council to, if we need to reach out to you, we can go ahead and contact, like whether it's the recording secretary or treasurer, because the financial team will send an email separately to them. The auditor is going to want to know who's the auditor. So just letting you know on that. And we'll get that to you. And then there was a question from Carissa from Edison, just reiterating about gift cards. Gift cards cannot be purchased, correct, for things like teacher appreciation. So again, yes, correct. You cannot use PTA funds to purchase gifts, gift cards, or anything like that. It is an IRS. You know, they frown upon it. So the financial team will actually go over that with your financial, the training tomorrow. So if you're able to sit on the financial training tomorrow, that will be discussed. They'll also have that on the website under the training forms, as well as the purchasing, using PTA funds to purchase gift cards and stuff. But yes, again, you cannot use it to purchase gifts, gift cards, or anything like that. Because the IRS, because it's considered like commingled funds, and you can't do that. So again, if you are not attending any of the trainings tomorrow, whether it's membership or recording secretary, try to sit on the financial training if you can, because they'll elaborate more on the financial stuff. So Sherry, was there any other questions that you see on chat or anything?
Nothing. I'm going to put a little hint of mine for just.
Yeah, and Sherry's
Thanks again,
awesome.
Sherry,
She's been a council. She's been a unit president for many years. She's a seasoned board member, so she's also a great person of information, you know. And again, like Nan said, that
We're all learners.
and then like Nan said, she'll, you know, let you know about who your mentors are, and your mentor, you know, is the person that you want to speak with if there's any problems. And again, just keep in mind on the chain of event, you know, chains. If there's a problem, come to me at Torrance Council PTA, because we report them the 33rd, 33rd reports to state, state reports to national. If you go and say you have a complaint about something and you go to state, state's going to kick it back to 33rd, 33rd is going to kick it back to us at the Torrance Council. So if there's any problem or concern that you have maybe with somebody on your board, something about, you know, something like that, then, you know, please email me, reach out to me, let me know, because when I get a notification from 33rd saying, oh, this person sent me an email because of blah, 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 do you know anything about it? I'd be like, what? I don't know anything. It's good to keep me on the loop if you have any problems. And again, earlier in the meeting, we stressed about turning in your documents. Please, please, please. Well, I can't be using please. We promise not to use please so much. We want to remind you that is very important that when you, I know, because Diane's like, she said please 10 times. It's very important that things that are due on specific dates, that you please turn them in on time, because again, we have to send whatever you get to us to 33rd and again, so on and so forth. If we don't get it turned in, I get a nasty gram from 33rd saying, hey, you know what? We've been waiting for your audit from 3 years ago. Where is it? We've had a couple of units that hadn't filed their taxes for the last 2 years. That's a no-no, because IRS and the Attorney General Board are going to come after your unit, and they could disband your unit if you don't file your taxes. So please make sure everything's done on time. If you have problems getting your auditor to do the audit, or if you have problems getting your treasurer to do the annual treasurer's report, or you have problems getting your taxes done, anything like that, please reach out to council. We're not the police, but we will do what we can to provide you guidance and to help. And for example, Judy Briggs, who is our awesomest auditor and everything like that, she will help you do your audit if you cannot. If you're having problems, because you don't want to fall 1, 2, 3 years behind, because then you have to play catch up. So please, again, stop it with the please. So, you know, again, make sure that you turn things on time when we ask you, and then especially when we have events like association meetings, to where you need to RSVP, because if we order food or if we have to order things, we have a deadline to get that stuff out to whatever business or whatever organization. So if there's a due date that says you must RSVP by May 25th, please RSVP by May 25th, because then we can't guarantee anything after that. So just wanted to stress on that. And hopefully everybody had their incoming executive board meeting and their first executive incoming association meeting, because you want to make sure that you got to vote on things that you need to do in the summertime. So if you have a problem and you didn't have your incoming executive board or association meeting yet, please contact Diane, because you want to try to do that before June 30th, because otherwise you can't spend anything during the summer if it hasn't been approved by the association. So hopefully I didn't talk your ears on that. I'm a stressor.
Yes, you are.
I know.
Anyhow, you guys know where to reach us if you have questions. And I'm not trying to push you guys off, but we want to respect your time. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. This is our information, but again, I think you've probably received a ton of emails from us already. So know that Kami's been amazing. She's been putting all of our materials up. There's I think a training tab, right, Kami, on our website. And then this slide deck will go up right after. And as soon as I've uploaded the recording to our YouTube channel, I'll give her the embed link, and we'll make sure it gets added as well. So then you'll have it back for playback.
Can I just share a little bit?
Yes, go ahead,
Sorry,
please.
this is Sherry Kaku. I just want to let the presidents know, I thank you for stepping up to do this job, but I also want you to know that any unfulfilled positions are not your obligation to fulfill. And I don't want you to feel obligated to have to do many jobs, or the few people on board that you have to take on multiple jobs. So please don't feel obligated to do that. That's not why you took your position. So if you have to cut some that are not needed or something, you know, reach out to us and we'll help support you in terms of maybe ways to reach out or letters we've sent, but please don't feel obligated to be the everything for your unit, because there's so many kids at the school and so many parents. So you didn't take the job to do 8 jobs, you took the job to do this one, and it's hard enough. So good luck to you. Please reach out. We're all here because of the kids. So we're all busy people. So please reach out if you need anything.
And there are no dumb questions.